And welcome back, students, as we continue to dive into Python. Today we are going to look at functions. And to kind of look at this, we're going to look at two different functions here. We're going to look at one pretty much that doesn't return a value and one that returns a value, which is very similar to like what we've done in the past with methods. So I've created a program here for us to pretty much test this out with. So I have a simple while loop that's just going to continuously run, unless of course we put the command shutdown in it. Otherwise, it's going to do one of these appropriate commands. So if I input hello there, it's just going to put a message. If I put shutdown, breaks out a loop, which terminates the program. If I put in math, it's going to call this calculate function. Others, it's going to call this repeat again. So let's go ahead and just run this. Run module. Okay. Please enter a word or phrase. So let's go ahead and do the hello there. Okay, and if we do, I'll come back to shutdown. Let's go ahead and do math. So enter a number, we're going to put in 5, and you can see it comes back at 25.0 because this is where we printed it out. Now, how this works, of course, is that it took this value that I had here. Notice I had to typecast it to an int, plugged it into here, and then it called in this function called math.pownum2. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out with this is you notice up here, I had to import the math library that Python would need to access some of these higher math commands. So pow is one of those most common ones, like it's for power, obviously. So that's how you can get in. Remember, in Java, a lot of our math libraries are built in. Python doesn't necessarily have all those built in because it doesn't necessarily need them all. So if I want to access them, I just put import math. So that's one of the ways we can start importing in other libraries and stuff like that. So then, of course, I have a return value here. I'm returning calc because calc is the variable I have. And that, of course, gets plugged back in here for value because value is what stores the result of that function call. All right, and if we do the anything else, so I'll just put some gibberish here and just say hello. Please re-enter the word or phrase. Okay, so and all it simply just asks me to do is re-enter it, and it just repeats it. Okay, and then if I put shut down, you can see my program has terminated. So it's a very simple example of showing how these functions work. Again, this right here is a no arg parameters here, so you can see there's no arguments. Here we have one parameter or being plugged in for arguments. We of course could have multiples be plugged in, just like we do with Java. This one, of course, returns a value. This one does not. All right, so we have our accessors or our mutators that we're kind of used to, but they're being used in different ways here for our functions. But the important thing is you really have to ask yourself with the functions is, do I need to return a value or do I not need to return a value? So if I need to return a value, it's going to be kind of like calc here. All right, so that's kind of the structure that we're looking for. If we're not returning a value, it can be like repeat again here, in which there's no return statement. So those are the two big differences to kind of watch out for when we're writing our functions. Now I have given you some resources. So if you're like, I still don't quite understand functions, even though these are pretty much just methods, you can look here at the different examples that I've linked in here for the things like passing references versus value, function arguments. Of course, I also have linked in here the math_pow method, okay, which of course you can see is right here, import math, and it shows you how to break that down into its different forms. Right? So it's kind of a quicker set of notes today, simply because there's not as much to really go over, other than just understanding that you have to create these methods, just like we did our main method. Now, one thing I am going to add here just before we close out is that I always put the main method first inside of my class here, and then I put in any additional function after that. So if I wanted to make one more function, I'm not going to worry about what it does. All right, I always, of course, put a space there just so that we put def, and then we give it the name. So new function. Okay, now let's just make this a no arg. I'm not really worried about what this function does. All right, and then I want to do something. So maybe this function simply just prints out a message and just says, this is another function. Right? And that's all that function does. And I could have that function exist outside of this while loop. So I could just call new function. Okay, run my program. Let's just go ahead and just do shutdown. And of course, this is another function. It's a pretty simple bit of code that simply just shows how we can use function calls. You know, it's kind of like in Java we had to do static calls. We could do like this. We don't have to necessarily invoke them as objects of a class because right now everything's inside the main class. We haven't really dealt with, dealing with multiple files. We're not necessarily going to get to that. That's not the scope of what we're covering here. This is just kind of a quick overview of some of the basics of Python. All right, but this is where we're going to stop right now. I think this is a good point to stop for Python. As we, like I said, we talked about functions. You can see on here there's a bunch of different things in here that we could get into. But for now, this is a good stopping point. So I think I will leave you here, and I will talk to you next time.